The heavy oak walls of the Manhattan federal courtroom were echoing today. My biological parents, Maximilian and Lara Thorne, were sitting there. Their faces wore that perfectly sculpted smile that had once frozen me with fear in childhood. Today they were confident, as if absolutely certain that victory would be theirs. And why wouldn't they be? In the eyes of the world, they were New York's biggest fashion moguls and social media stars, a couple whom people worshipped. But me? I was the daughter they had thrown away like old trash 22 years ago. But today, the rules of the chessboard had changed. My grandfather, Elias Vanderbilt, the only person in this world who had given me true love, was no more. On his deathbed, he had left his entire $5 billion Vanderbilt shipping empire to me. And those same parents, who hadn't even looked back when they left me on his doorstep, had now dragged me to court to strip this wealth away from me. I stood on the witness stand. I could clearly hear my pulse echoing off the courtroom's marble walls. Judge Silas Montgomery looked up from his documents. He stared at me for a few moments, then suddenly a wave of recognition crossed his face. He took off his glasses and said softly in a trembling voice, "1 minute. Is it you?" The silence that fell was deafening. I saw the glossy color draining from my parents' faces. The truth they had buried under lies and fame for years was about to come out. But before I go further, I want you to pause for a moment. Which city in the world are you listening to my story from? Do write it in the comments. I read every single one. To understand the truth of this courtroom, we must go back 22 years. I was barely 6 years old that day. The August sun was scorching everything on that old Vanderbilt estate in Maine. My mother, Ilara, was kneeling in front of me. Her white designer dress was fluttering in the wind, and the scent of her expensive oud perfume hung in the air like a false promise. "Be a good girl with Grandpa, Savannah," she whispered. She tried to smile, but her dark red lips were trembling, and there wasn't a single tear in her eyes. My father, Maximilian, stood a few feet away, impatiently tapping his fingers on the hood of his sports car. "Let's go, Ilara. We'll miss our flight," he shouted dismissively. "Flight?" I asked, clutching their clothes with my tiny hands. "Where are you going? Can I come too?" For a second, Ilara froze. "Just a small business trip, sweetheart. We'll be back very soon." But even through a child's innocence, I could tell her voice was breaking. She didn't hug me. She just touched my cheek with her diamond earrings and blew a fake kiss into the air. The sound of their high heels echoed like a bomb's countdown. The sports car door slammed shut, tires screeched on the gravel, and they disappeared behind those large iron gates. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I screamed their names, but the only answers were the hot wind and the sound of crickets. Then, a heavy and trustworthy hand landed on my trembling shoulder. It was my grandfather, Elias Vanderbilt. He sat down silently beside me. He was a man who never spoke without reason. His slate-gray eyes held a strange mix of sorrow and love. He dusted the dirt off my knees and said softly, "They don't realize what a great treasure they've lost today, my little Savannah." He lifted my face and said, "From today onwards, you will never feel rejected. This is my promise to you." He picked me up into his arms as if I weighed nothing and carried me inside the mansion. Clinging to his chest, I could hear his heartbeat, and my fear began to fade. That was the first moment that day when I felt safe. That night, I watched him from the kitchen. He was making hot chocolate for me himself. No servants, no show. Just him and me. "A little extra cinnamon, right, Savvy?" he asked with a smile. I nodded, but there were still tears in my eyes. As he was putting me to bed, I asked, "Will they ever come back?" Grandpa paused for a moment, then stroked my hair and said, "Savannah, some doors are better left closed once they shut. From today, you don't need to run after love. Love lives here now, close to you." That night, I fell asleep holding his hand. I stopped waiting for old ghosts and became the person who had chosen me. But growing up in the shadow of a billionaire like Elias Vanderbilt wasn't like a Hollywood movie. That mansion built on those rocky shores looked like a lonely fortress. There were no frivolous parties there. There was discipline. Every morning at exactly 6 a.m., there were 2 knocks on my door. "Wake up, Savannah. The world doesn't wait for the lazy." His heavy voice would echo. I learned to read the Wall Street Journal sitting beside him. He would ask me, "Read the headline. Now tell me, what truth are these people hiding?" Slowly, his lessons sank into my mind. He taught me, "Savannah, the truth is always hidden behind the bold letters. Only those with the courage to dig can find it." Time passed in that old mansion in Maine with Grandpa like the calm after a sea storm. He didn't just teach me business. He taught me how to read human nature. He used to say, "Savannah, wealth is like salty water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get, and the more it drives you mad. Just make sure your thirst doesn't come at the cost of someone else's destruction." When I turned 17, the old wounds began to ache again. One evening, I was sitting in the library when my biological parents' faces suddenly flashed on TV. Maximilian and Elara Thorne were standing on a red carpet in Los Angeles. They had become huge celebrities and were promoting their new reality show, Thorne's Redemption, in which they showed how family-oriented they were. My fists clenched. Grandpa entered the room, looked at the screen, and then at me. "Do you miss them?" he asked softly. My throat was choked with anger. I said clearly, "No, they are dead to me." Grandpa nodded. "Good. Pining for people who walked away from you on their own is like knocking on a steel door. In trying to see them, you'll forget those who still stand with you with open arms." That very night, he gave me an old brown leather notebook. "Write your truth in this, Savannah, because one day, this world will try to change your truth. Then this notebook will be your shield." I didn't know that old diary would become the greatest sword of my life. 2 years later came that ominous morning when my grandfather's heart stopped beating. I found him in his study, his head bowed over his walnut desk. His pen had written one last line in the diary. "When truth falls into the wrong hands, it becomes poison." I didn't cry. I just froze. The man who was my entire world had left me alone. At his funeral, all of New York's elite class had gathered. Politicians, CEOs, celebrities. But I didn't want to be part of that circus. I saw Maximilian and Elara Thorne sitting in the front row. Their designer black clothes and their fake tears were just like their career. After the funeral, when we returned to the estate, they came to me for the first time in 22 years. "Savannah," Elara said with great drama, "how big you've grown." I looked into her eyes. "Wow, you remember my name." Maximilian's face hardened. "We are family, Savannah. We should forget the past and come together." "Family?" I said. "You left me like an old bag that didn't fit in the car trunk." Just then, Grandpa's trusted lawyer, Thaddeus Vance, arrived and called everyone to the library. Silence fell as he opened the will. "I, Elias Vanderbilt, leave my entire estate, shipping empire, and all assets to my only granddaughter, Savannah B. Vanderbilt." The breaths of everyone in the courtroom caught. "This is insanity!" Elara shrieked. "My father-in-law was senile. He didn't know what he was doing." Thaddeus pulled out another envelope. Elias left a special message for his son and daughter-in-law. Those who abandon truth for fame had already lost their inheritance before I died. I gave you a chance to become human beings. You threw it in the trash. Ilara was trembling with rage. You'll regret this, Savannah. You won't get a single brick of this mansion. I watched them leave. They weren't the kind to give up. A week later, a heavy manila envelope arrived in the mailbox of that main mansion. There was no return address. When I opened it, my senses left me. Notice of civil lawsuit. Maximilian and Ilara had sued me. They alleged that I had manipulated Grandpa, kept him away from his family, and pressured him into changing his will. The news spread like wildfire the next day. Daughter betrayed her own parents to take over the Vanderbilt empire. Paparazzi surrounded the mansion. Camera flashes lit up the dark night like lightning. I went to San Francisco, or New York, to meet Thaddeus. He said, "These people will play very dirty, Savannah. They will drag your image through the mud." Looking out the window, I said, "They are not my parents. They are two strangers drunk on the greed of wealth. They think I'm still that 6-year-old girl who cried. But they don't know. I am Elias Vanderbilt's granddaughter." I picked up Grandpa's diary and held it tightly. If they wanted a war, then war they would get. The courtroom was suffocatingly silent. Outside, New York's rain was crashing against the marble windows. But the coldness inside didn't need any weather. Maximilian and Ilara Thorne sat in their expensive suits, as if on a movie set. Their lawyer, Marcus Stone, known for his ruthlessness, began his opening statement. "Your Honor," Stone said in his silky voice, "we are being shown the picture of an innocent girl. But the truth is that Savannah took advantage of Elias Vanderbilt's failing health. She alienated him from his own son and used undue influence to claim a $5 billion empire for herself. This is the height of greed. My blood was boiling. The very people who had left me like an old toy in that cold Maine house were now calling me greedy." Thaddeus Vance stood up slowly. "Your Honor, we believe not in words, but in Elias Vanderbilt's own words." He called me to the witness stand. As I reached the stand, my eyes met Ilara's. She gave me that fake maternal look she used on camera for her reality show. But behind her eyes was only hatred. "Savannah," Thaddeus asked, "did you ever pressure your grandfather?" "Never," I said in a clear voice. "Grandpa picked me up from where these people had thrown me. He molded me, not pressured me." Marcus Stone attacked me. "Then tell me, Savannah, why didn't your parents write you a single letter in the last 20 years? Did you hide those letters?" From my bag, I took out that old brown leather notebook. "No, Mr. Stone. I was the one who wrote the letters, and their reply never came." I handed the notebook toward Judge Montgomery. "This doesn't just contain my drawings. It contains the receipts that Elias Vanderbilt kept safe." Silence fell as the judge opened that notebook. It contained all those unopened letters I had sent to my parents as a child, each stamped, "Return to sender." But the biggest bombshell was yet to come. In the last pages of the notebook, Elias had tucked some bank statements. Thaddeus projected them onto the large screen in the courtroom. "Look at this," Thaddeus thundered. "For the last 15 years, Maximilian and Ilara Thorne have been taking lakhs of dollars every month from Elias Vanderbilt under the guise of child support, claiming they were raising Savannah in expensive New York schools. While Savannah was right there in Maine with her grandfather, they sold their own daughter and then looted their own father in that child's name." Chaos erupted in the courtroom. Ilara's face turned white, and Maximilian slumped in his chair. Their redemption joke had been stripped naked in front of the world. They weren't reality TV stars. They were frauds. Judge Montgomery slammed his gavel. "Order!" He looked at Maximilian and Alara, disgust in his eyes. This court has never seen such despicable greed. You not only abandoned your daughter, but also committed fraud in her name. Verdict: the case was dismissed. Elias Vanderbilt's entire empire remained legally mine. But the judge didn't stop there. He ordered a criminal inquiry for fraud and embezzlement against Maximilian and Alara. As we walked out of the courtroom, the rain had stopped. Alara came running to me, her mascara streaming. "Savannah, please, don't destroy us. We're your parents." I stopped and looked at them. The same people who once seemed so big now looked so small. "You said I would regret this, didn't you? I've spent the last 22 years in regret, wondering what was wrong with me that you left me. But today I understand. The lack wasn't in me. It was in your soul." I held my head high and walked toward my car. "I don't even have any hatred left for you. Only silence." 1 year later, the Thorn Empire was finished. Maximilian is in jail, and Alara has lost all her fame. I gave Vanderbilt Shipping a new direction. I transformed it into the Vanderbilt Foundation, which helps children who have been discarded as unwanted by their families. In that coastal Maine mansion, even today, there are 2 knocks at 6 a.m. But now, those knocks happen in my mind, reminding me of what Grandpa said. Truth never loses a war. I closed Grandpa's diary and looked toward the sea. I was no longer alone. I carried a legacy built not from money, but from the sweetness of old hot chocolate and a single honest promise.